It's Julia Kelly from Moonflower Studio, and this is my studio vlog for um, the week ending on, well, yesterday was Friday, but November was today, November 2nd. Yeah, so All Saints Day, All Souls Day, All Saints Day. Um, but yeah, so I'm a little late to the game. I was trying to get some stuff done and then had a hiccup not really an oops, but I've had to change my plans. And so I thought I would get on here and do a floss tube and kind of share with you what the oops is. Well, I've had a couple oopses. We've had snow. We had our first snow. I think I'll put that in as the intro. The fall is definitely kind of laying her blanket down, and I tell you, the cottonwoods in Southwest Colorado are just golden. The oak brush, the cottonwoods, the other trees other than the aspens. We kind of had a really fast aspen color season. It was really impressive, but didn't last very long. And it kind of just boom, we're done. But the cottonwoods, any kind of, little creek or canyon with the cottonwoods, with the red rock. And so, yeah, so that's what's going on. We have the fire going in the fireplace. It's getting chilly most mornings. It's just, fall is in the air, and I feel like I want to make soup. Yeah. But I have several things I want to talk about today. I have two oops that I want to clarify. And I bought some stuff that I want to share. And through the week, I filmed a couple techniques or making decisions about my design, thinking if I talked out my thought process, that maybe that would help somebody else to kind of understand my thought process for stuff that I wanted to share. I think that's about it for the chunks of time. And of course, the German Shepherd is laying on the floor behind me because, again, when mom says she has something to do. Yeah. So I'm trying to decide if I should do the oopses first and then the fun stuff. I should do the oops first and the fun stuff. So oops number one is last week. If you watched last week, you know this. If you didn't watch last week or haven't heard this, I also am doing a podcast, the Kelly Lewis podcast. I'll put it up here. I'll put a link down below. And it's going to cover, it's called the Kelly Lewis Podcast, Pondering Women's Place in Art, Literature, and Culture. So obviously that's going to be very heavy on history, politics, as in history's politics, not so much a political podcast, hopefully. And I kind of just shared, I thought last week, I was like, oh, it'll be great to show some tidbits of, things I've learned and kind of whet your appetite. And if you're interested, you can go watch the podcast. And my mistake is that I kind of got called on it in a comment that, like, I got the comment in an email, but then it didn't show up as a comment, and I searched everything. I wouldn't have deleted it. I would have, allowed it to be on the post, on the video. So I'm not quite sure why maybe she changed her mind and deleted it, but I already got in the email. I'm not quite sure. But her argument was, it was valid. I mean, she said that I just glossed over slavery and cotton, the history of the industry of cotton and slavery. And it kind of made me think two things. One, I probably shouldn't try and be informal about what I share that's covered in a huge depth on the podcast. The podcast is the first series I'm doing is called the History of Women Stitching, and I go back to the beginning of time and talk about women and how they were responsible for basically all or most of spinning thread production up to the Industrial Revolution, and they had to find time to do that when they were finding time to do all the other things that they did. We talk about the development of the middle class, from the plagues in the medieval era, and we haven't even gotten to the Industrial Revolution. We've hit slightly upon how Europe and mostly England totally brought India to its knees and took away the cotton production of India, and also how the slave industry, cotton production, and the desire for cotton in Europe hugely was responsible for the slave trade. I just want to say right now, I am not lightly hitting these points. I just haven't gotten to these points on that series. I will be getting to those points and directing you, sharing what I've learned, but more importantly, directing you to amazing books and writers and researchers who have covered these things hugely. My desire for the Colorless podcast is not so much to totally hit upon grievances in this world like the slave trade or like India's, economic doom after, Britain took over the cotton industry. It is specifically about women. And women, whatever nationality they are, whatever ethnic group they are, what we kind of have in common is that we are the people who are the caregivers and take care of children. And he's walking out the other door, that's why I look that way. But we have so much in common as women, whatever we are. So it probably is going to focus more on how women were affected by the cotton trade and how women were affected or caused slavery or were affected in India from what happened in India or caused what happened in India. The focus of my channel is women. And I will certainly direct you to the resources I've read that are hugely on the bigger picture. Fabric has shaped our world. And I think it's just one of those things we just doesn't occur to us how much fabric has shaped our world. Not just our clothes we wear, but also the hobby of what this channel is about is the needle arts. So, but I just want to clarify that I learned, all you can do is try stuff, and then if it doesn't go the way you want, you learn from your mistakes, and then you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again because I don't want to give disrespect where it's so not meant to be. And just say, I think probably now in the future, I will mention what podcasts I have up, but I'll probably throw out a teaser instead of a tidbit. Let me tell you something. I'll probably throw out a teaser and say, on the podcast, we are going to be talking about cotton and slavery, or on the podcast, we're going to be talking about India and how horrible Europe was to, we outsourced India before India outsourced us. If you ever get mad at like India for taking on industry, we did it to them first. And also the other point I want to make is on the podcast, obviously it's talking, there's no video, but I have transcripts of the podcast. Mostly they will be on the kellylewispodcast.com website. A few of them will be on my Moonflower Muse, my Moonflower Studio website, or a link. You'll easily find them. But the other thing I've discovered is women directly who are taking on the subjects that I might not cover. Like there's an amazing woman in India who is directly talking about India's great history of cotton production. And so instead of me trying to share with you what I gleaned from her, I'm just going to highlight her as much as I possibly can and link to her. So you can follow her, which she's a way better person to talk about how India was affected and women were affected by what happened to their cloth production. And the same way about the cotton industry and the Black history of slavery. Better for me to connect you or say, hey, there's amazing woman who is doing, is involved in living history museums and directly talks about the things that I'm just highlighting. And here's her link and follow her. Same thing with Native American women. I follow several that are jumping up and really sharing their culture. And I want to we have a bell on the door. I want to highlight these other women who are artists or writers or historians, who are speaking up about their culture. So yeah, so that's number one. Oops. So doing it the right way this time. A teaser is I now have up my third installment, Women, the Vote, and the Pie, that it gives a lot of insight into where women voted first, why it was that women voted first in the West, what was happening in the West that allowed women to vote first in those states, what issues were very important to women when before they got the vote and after they got the vote. Were considered emotional voters, were considered liberal voters. So as emotional liberal voters, what were we so sure that we wanted to have laws passed? And no surprise, it was things that saved our homes and our families. Because that has always been the thing that women have been concerned about, is protecting our homes and our families, our children and our homes. But if you're interested in that, there will be a link. Like I said, there's a link down below for my Kelly Lewis podcast. And now enough on that. I really want on this channel, I want to be about the art. And then the Kelly Lewis podcast, when I get a wild hair about something, I can go off about that. So humor me. I will try hard. I need to learn how to keep these two things divided. So, humor me. Okay, so that was oops number one. Oops number two is I designed a new chart. And if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, which again links below, you will see the process of me stitching this chart. And it's going to be a new series. It's called, it's a chickadee series, my 2025, or kind of my thought for, this is starting before 2025, obviously, winter. This will be considered a winter pattern, is to do birds. I have a lot of bird designs that were collages, and I am developing several of them, or using them as kind of a starting point to do other bird designs. So I think that might be a lot of birds might be coming out from me in 2025. But let me see if I can find. I have too many piles. Okay, so here is my winter chickadees and winter berries pattern that I was hoping to have framed. My intention yesterday, Friday, was I thought I was going to get it done. I got it done. It has this silver metallic DMC in it. On the snow, you can see it's, and on the berries, just kind of highlighting. It kind of glitters a little bit. But I'm going to do a winter chickadee, a spring chickadee, a summer chickadee, and a fall chickadee. And I wanted to do them in a square frame. I haven't really focused on framing anything other than the Fox in the Box series. So I've always loved, and I think they're kind of fun, and I have a few of them, just a fun 5x5, frame. And looking here, make sure I'm right on my numbers. Yeah, so 5x5 frame. And you can, I thought, well, I can find, like this could be a fall one easily. This is winter. It's, kind of a funky frame, like a little bit whimsical, funky, 5-inch square frame. They're all over the place. You see them all over the place. This would be they'd be really easy to find. And then if you wanted to, you could connect them, somehow together, or just trade them out in the same spot. So, how easy is that, right? Well, it's not as easy as you think. Now I want to use hand dyed or overdyed. Like this is corn flour from Fiber on a Whim. And that's what this is on. Not that the other chickadees through the season, this color might change, but I wanted to do hand dyed. One, you're probably already saying, this is Aida cotton. I have no idea about linen, but when things are hand dyed, they use a hot water bath and you get shrinkage. And I've talked about that. I've talked about that with my little cookie cutters, how you have to pay attention and have some ability to, vary the edges, because your 18 count might be more like a 19 count. And that's kind of been proven. I would say all the checking of gauge, and what gauge is, and I explained this. If I'm okay, my previous video that was my last studio vlog, I did a whole thing on Aida and linen. Should you stitch on Aida? Should you stitch on linen? And I, being me, making it more complicated than it needs to be, I actually went back and talked about the history of Aida, which is cotton, and the history of linen. And I couldn't just start in the 19th century. I had to go way back. That's what got me in trouble about the comment I made about slavery and cotton. I will still give you more history and info probably than you want. But also, if you're like, I don't want to listen to the history of it, skip ahead in that video. And what I also did is that I shot close up with my I have a new phone camera, and I have a arm. I talked about the weave, the actual weave of Aida and the actual weave of linen, and the pluses and the negatives, pros and cons, both directions. But I also mentioned in that video about how to check gauge. And what I probably am going to do is splice up that video and things like how to check gauge. I probably am going to just have a playlist of tidbits and things that are helpful. So if you're like, okay, I think she has a thing about how to check gauge, you're not going to have to go through the history for 25 minutes, or it's not that long, but until you find how to check gauge. I will make little snippets of helpful things, so you know. But quick thing is that gauge is how many holes per inch there is. This is the general rule that I have found. If you have been checking gauge and you have an opinion, please, nicely, put it down in the comments and let other people read it. My personal opinion is I think hand dye, you gain a hole. How does that work? You gain a hole. So when you're doing 18 count and you're only doing like a little cookie cutter that's only like 2 inches, that might not be a lot to gain 2 more holes. But when you're doing 14 count and you're doing 5.5 inches across, or even something bigger, and every inch you're gaining 1 hole, that is 1/4 of an inch. So your pattern will be 1/4 of an inch gaining or losing. See, this is when the dyslexic thing kicks in. If you're on 14 count, you're losing dimension, because what happened to me with this chickadee is I designed it, and at this point I'm going to change to my arm so you can look down at what I'm talking about. So just a second. Okay, so I want to show you this way first before I show you how this plays out in the design, and why there's such a huge difference between a factory colored piece of Aida, I assume linen would be the same, or a overdyed a piece of the same size. So when I designed the chickadee, you can see, where's my little pointer dude? Oh, come on, where are you? Okay, there he is. You can see down here is my design. I'm hiding most of this. Is my own design. I'm choosing to show you this much. But then up here, this is what you can change to. This is a stitch calculator. So if I want to stitch on 14 count, and I want it to fit in a 5-inch frame. And this is how I set this up when I designed this pattern. I need to stitch, I need to change that to 70. I need to stitch 70 stitches both directions. And if I do that, if I design a pattern that is 70 stitches both directions, and you can see here that this, I'm hiding this as right now it's at 75, and I'll tell you why here in a second, then it should stitch out to be 5 inches by 5 inches on 14 count Aida with 70 inches. On a factory release Zweigart or Witchell 14 count. If you get a hand dyed from someone, a beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful hand dyed, a couple things are going to happen, and I go into this in much more detail in my previous studio vlog that I don't want to go into again about sizing, what they do to make it stiff in the factory, and and how it comes from the factory. All of that is taken out when it's hand dyed and it's dyed in hot fabric, oh my goodness, hot water, and cotton and linen are going to shrink. So what happens is this 14 count, if you take your gauge, like I'm saying, you basically add a hole and you make that 15 count, then all of a sudden you've lost almost a 1/4 inch. See here, now it's 4.7 inches. And if you're trying to, and that might be fine if you're doing a stand-up or a pillow or making a frame be made, but most people aren't going to want to spend money on a 5x5 kind of fun stitch. You're wanting to find a frame that exists. Well, what I figured out, so when I got this stitched, and then I measured it out, and I matched it to my frame that I already had, and realized that the design was not fitting correctly in a 5x5 space. I'm like, well, okay. Then I checked the gauge, realized that it really wasn't a 14 count. It was really more like a 15 count. So then I thought, okay, well, let me go online and see if you can buy 4.5 by 4.5 square frames. Guess what? They don't make square frames in that small of size in a 1/2 inch. They make 3x3s, 4x4s, 5x5s, 6x6s. They don't do 1/2 inches. And I was searching Amazon and Googling it. Certainly, I could not find one. Yes, you could have one custom made, but I don't want to create a design and say, oh, well, if you want to do this, you have to have it custom made. So, so that left a quandary for me. I'm like, okay, well, I really want to highlight hand-dyed fabric. Hand-dyed 14 count fabric is going to really come out as 15 count, and this design does not work. So we'll get to the solution to my oops. But while I have this chart up, I just want to play around with this a little bit. So let's go back to 14 count. 14 count, it will hit a 5x5. What if you go the other direction? Say you want to go bigger and you want to stitch it on 16 count. 16 count, you're hitting again that it's getting smaller and smaller, and you're again in that 1/2 inch range where that's not going to work. But say you're stitching on a 16 count hand dyed, which is more like go the other direction, is more like a 17 count, then you're literally okay, because you're hitting what you could put in a 4x4 frame. So a 16 count hand dyed is more woodwork in a 4x4 frame, but a 16 count from the factory, you'd have an extra 1/4 inch. So what if you went an 18 count? Okay, 18 count isn't so bad. You could probably still fudge that to fit in a 4x4 frame. But what if your hand dye is more like a 19 count? Now you're back to it probably looking really small in a 4x4 frame. And then if you did a 20 count, true 20 count, you're hitting 3.5, and you can't find a 3.5 frame. Obviously, if you chose to do this in a pillow, it would be an absolutely adorable pillow. This design for pillows would be fantastic, and you could do it in whatever size count you wanted, and it would not matter. But a 20 count hand dyed is more like a 21. So now you're hitting down like, again. So I guess the point I'm making is that if you do hand dyed, your gauges really are in between the set counts, in my opinion. Okay, so that is the discovery of the issue, because what I realize is what I have with this design wanting to fit in a 5x5 frame that is very easy to find. Some people are going to do it on a 14 count from the factory. Some people are going to do hand dyed, and it's going to be a 15 count. And I want to provide the ability to do it in the frame like I am. What do I do? Because a 15 count is more like 4.7. And that is literally, I'm losing a 1/4 inch plus. So what do I do? So before I get to that, let us move over here. Let me kind of work this out here. So here's the design again. So what I'm talking about, see if it played out correctly. What did I say it was? It was 4.7. So there is of course the glare has to be right where I'm wanting to illustrate. So there's my half mark for 4.5, 6, 7. That is exactly where I was intending this to stop. So it's a 4.7. So it's stitching out correctly to having a 15 count gauge. Options I had, I don't know where I found this. This is a 4.5 inch frame. And it fits like that. I don't know where I got this, but it's weird because I can't find more like this online. I have no idea where I got it. I just had it in my stash. But I really don't want to go that small, and I really didn't want to go straight black. I really wanted to kind of use the frame as a way to really highlight the stitching. I really wanted to use this frame because this to me is so wintry, and it just picks up the using the metallic thread. That is way too much negative space. I'm going to push my lead in because I'll be very sad if I put lead on this. This is way too much negative space. If you look at the design and do a diagonal, I literally have nothing. This should be more like that. This is a good amount of negative space. This is how this artwork in a 5x5 frame, I would want to be like that. Imagine that this continued here, that's the right amount of negative space to have. So yeah, what do I do? What I did yesterday when I figured this all out, my husband was busy all day with meetings and stuff. So he called. He had a really hard couple days with his business. And then I was just sitting on the couch looking at TikTok, and he called, and it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he's like, "How's your day?" And I said, "Well, it was going really well until I figured out that I wasn't accounting for hand dyed, overdyed fabric, and now I need to figure out a solution." And I've been an artist long enough. I've been an art teacher long enough that I know that I would do better to just stop messing, because I got back in and I was messing with my WinStitch is my computer program, and fudging it and about ready to start ripping stuff out. And I thought, no. I need to just take a breath and stop for the day. And then tomorrow, then I will figure out what to do about this oops. So I have figured out a solution that I want to share with you. And I need to figure out a concise way to share this in the pattern, because this is an issue. I want to do this series in frames. You don't have to, you could do it on a pillow. Like I said, I want to do this series in frames. I mean, look at how gorgeous. Forget about this, but it's just perfect. This frame, a silvery frame with this winter design, is perfect. So this is what I came up with. And let me see if I can explain this to you. Get all my frames out of the way. I'm going to pause. Okay, so this is a solution I came up with. If you can see, there is a red line that goes there and goes there. And then you see here, remember that the old design was 70 by 70, designed for 14 count, factory 14 count. But it played out, and that would equal 5 by 5 inches. That played out with overdyed, that a 14 count overdyed, because you're dealing with hot baths, played out to be, what was it, 4.7 by 4.7 for 70 count. So what I did is, if you'll notice here, there's a red line. If you follow it through, it's on the 70, both directions. And then I've added more stitching here and then a little more stitching here. So what that means is that now this is 75 by 75. I've given you 5 more stitches each direction. The extra stitches on this side is also on this side, but just believe me that you basically have a 5 stitch wiggle room. I've given you wiggle room, which means if you stitch this and you pick your fabric and it is a true 14 count, then you should stitch to the red line, both directions. If you have picked an overdyed fabric and you have counted the gauge and the gauge is playing out to be more like 15 count, I would still start here. I would have your frame. Having the frame picked is very important, because then you can lay the frame down on top like I just did and play with it. But if you think, oh my gosh, I do need a little bit more to not have a gigantic amount of negative space, because remember, if you have the frame and the chickadee was here and all the stuff was here, you don't want half of that to be negative space. You want the chickadee and everything to be more across that midline, like that. So if yours is playing out where the chickadee and all the berries and everything are on the half point, and you're like, oh, I really want to move it more this direction, then I have given you some more of that design to stitch out farther. So there will be videos how to do this adjustment, I guess is what I'm saying. But I mean, it just looks, I just love it. And let me show you. And it was looking a little dull until I added this is DMC metallic white. So the edge of the snow and then all the berries have a little bit of metallic white on them. Kind of like a little dew. It's a chickadee with dew. So I'm going to flip back over. I think I shared my 2 oopses, so now I can share the fun stuff. So I'm going to flip the camera back where you can see me. I think I want to do fun things next. So fun things is haul. And I think the first thing I want to do is have you gotten your tickets for the Jingle Ball yet. This is completely virtual. You don't have to leave your home. It is so fun. I did it last year and it felt like the start of the Christmas holiday for me. It was just a blast. Stephanie, I was wrong. Stephanie Webb, I want to call her Lindsay and that's not right. Stephanie and her husband have a online shop, and her company is Lindy Stitches, and they put on a virtual Christmas celebration. I mean, it is so much fun. $10 gets you in the door. There's 12 designers, 12 days of Christmas kind of a thing, 3-day period. And then once you're in the door, there's options. Tickets are still available. The 12 designers have a one-on-one time where they just talk about and I learned as a new designer, I learned so much. It was so valuable. Like the screen is there and then you can type questions for them. And I asked, kind of, oh, what did you do when you first started designing? Or how did you handle this? So gracious. They all were so gracious. And Stephanie has fantastic, fun little videos to cover everything. I highly recommend following her on Instagram. Or I think the Jingle Ball has its actual Instagram. But a great way to kind of learn about all the designers and who's coming. So last year I just did the free stuff and kind of sat and listened. Yeah, I just really enjoyed the designers. Anytime the designers were talking and kind of sharing their process, I was like right there listening. So this year I have the classes had two options. One was kits that the designers will like develop, do a kit and they'll mail out all the pieces and parts for the kit, or you could do a PDF and do it that way. I'm doing two classes. I am doing the Blue Flower class. It is a gorgeous design. I mean, it's a 3-dimensional. It is, well, all her stuff is gorgeous. It's just so yum. It's just so yummy. That's the only word I can think of. But I'm more interested in her teaching me how to construct the 3-dimensional thing, to tell you the truth. And then the other class I took was from Stephanie, who's doing stockings. And same thing. She's doing a design where they're like cute little stockings, like for elves or something. And again, the construction, both of those classes are things I'm like, okay, I need to learn, I know how to make a pillow and I know how to put things in frames. I have done other things with 3-dimensional pin cushions and things with my designs, but I'm always like, I probably am making it as difficult as possible. I kind of tend to do that. Like a lot of times it'll work in the end, but then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is like the hardest way possible you could do this. So yeah, so I thought, well, I'm going to take these classes and learn something new from people who, have information to share. And that's going to be phenomenal. Plus just all the beautiful work. Oh my gosh. I swear I think my lady cut my hair was a little more too careful on my bangs. I'm probably gonna have to go in or do it myself because this is still too much hair in front of my face. So I'm taking two classes with a PDF option, not the kit option. I don't know if there's still kit options available, but go check out the Jingle Ball. And it's really important you put the in front of Jingle Ball. I've noticed that when I've tried to do it. There's also merch. And I'm so ready for Christmas. It might be because I've been working on a winter chickadee design, but I got merch from the Jingle Ball. So I want to share the merch that I opened up one package, but I did not open up the other package. Official package from the Jingle Ball. I kind of went crazy because her design, okay, Stephanie has amazing designs, both in her cross stitching, but also her designs for the Jingle Ball. I mean, these things are like, yeah, it's fun because they're cross stitchy, but I'm like, these are like Christmas t-shirts. These are so cool that I have Christmas t-shirts now that even after the Jingle Ball, I can go wear, out and just be festive, because these are how gorgeous her designs are. So I got the, and the color combos were really hard to decide because I loved them on black. There's like 4 or 5 different colors in the palette, But this is the Jingle Ball t-shirt. And then, of course, in all her videos, she's wearing these. And I'm like, oh, I want that. I really like that. So I got the Noel lady with the green. I mean, that's a gorgeous, I'm trying to remember what I got. So this is the large. And I can tell the large, they're generous. Like for what I'm just laying it on me. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't get the extra large. Because I would have used it to like sleep in and lounge in. But to go, I mean, with a pair of jeans and like a cardigan over it, which she's been wearing the cutest like flannels and this. So I got the Jingle Ball lady, Noel. So I got that one, short sleeve. And then I was like, it's getting into winter. Really, I thought I really don't have a lot of long sleeve cool t-shirts you want to see, So then I thought, well, I can get another one. So I got the Swan in the same color. No, it's a darker green. This one is a lighter green, and then I got the darker green. The Swan. Look at that. And then it's long sleeve. So in the real, and that's a large too. Yeah, I'm really glad I got the largest because those are plenty big for me. And then I was on a roll because I thought I'm getting some of my Christmas shopping for myself done. And then I noticed, this is dangerous. I noticed she put up pajama bottoms. Cotton stretch pajama bottoms. And they have swans on them. And I usually get my adult children, to this day, always get a pair of pajama bottoms for Christmas. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I really don't like extremely bright, colors in pajama. And I love the t-shirt stretchy pajama bottoms. They're probably going to be way too long on me because I'm so short. I got a pair of pajama bottoms. Yeah. And I'm not even done. And then same thing. It's like, these are like Christmas colors. Like, look at the mugs. I mean, it's like cross stitch. Like there's a pair of scissors and it says Jingle Ball. But it doesn't scream cross stitch. There's a needle. It's just perfect. And the size. Oh my gosh. I love this size. So yeah, so I think Stephanie knocked it out of the park for the merch. I mean, this merch is wonderful. Design wise, it is, what's the thing? Chef kiss. I did, like I said, use metallic. This is not Krynex. It is DMC metallic thread. That is a pain and a half plus 10 to use. I have videotaped me using it and how much I don't like it. And I have that little clip. I have a clip on picking the greens in the chickadee pattern. And I think I have a clip on picking the reds. So I'm going to stick just a progression of these clips, kind of what I was dealing with when I was stitching, little tidbits for you. So I am trying to figure out what color I want to use for the leaves in the chickadee, in the branches. And I wanted to, well, first of all, isn't it gorgeous? The spectrum of all these greens and these reds that we're going to talk about here in a second. But first I want to talk about the greens. And I always say that the easiest way to tell what colors are in a color is to put it up against other colors. Because right now, like I pulled these all independently, my dog is now like right that way and doesn't want to be like so close to me videotaping. But you can see how much yellow these greens are gorgeous, but you can see how much yellow they have, that you might not have registered how much they lean towards yellow until one, you put them against other colors or compare them to the other greens you want. And then if you look this way, this one probably has the least amount of yellow. This one kind of is pretty equal. It leans a little yellow. It has a lot of brown in it. This one has a lot of variegation in it. And then this one, that still has a tad yellow, and then this one has the least yellow. And I kind of want something that's variegated. My first thought is to have something that has some variegation in it for the leaves. I'm kind of leaning towards Little Sprout. It has some change in color, but all you can do is try it. So I think I'm going to try some leaves in Little Sprout and see if I like it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, again, if you're not holding up your color to other colors and kind of playing with it a little bit, that I love Ruby Slippers. I think it's a fantastic red, except it has a lot of pink in it. And you don't realize this is ribbon red. You don't realize, you think these are kind of the same, but they're not. This is more of a true red, and that's what I use for the berries. This is gorgeous, but it has a lot of pink and it has a lot of brown. So that's another thing, is that, you just have to put stuff up and kind of have the ability to switch things around if you need to, and just don't kind of hold fast to what initially you pick when you're making a pattern. Okay, so I want to show you how I do the couching stitch, and what I am using is a metallic thread, which is the bane of all cross stitching and embroidery work. I 100% agree. But there's two ways I use it. I do the couching stitch. I do not back stitch. I think back stitching kind of makes it look like little dashes instead of a continuous line. And I like the look of a continuous line without like little dash marks through. You can do couching stitch anywhere you want to do back stitch, and I am just putting in some detail in my chickadee and winter berries. So first thing is the horrible metallic thread. And if you can see here, it is metal thread. Let's see, what can I do here? If I do it that close, it's metal thread wrapped around just fiber. And it is horrible. So I limit how much I use it, but I really thought it really did give some pizzazz to my chickadee and winter berries. So the first thing is, did I lose? Oh, there I have my needle. Okay. Is to not do long lengths. So I'm first going to show you how to do short distances with it. And I would say short distances would be, I don't know, what is that? Like maybe 1, 2, can I focus? 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5-ish, 3 jumps of the squares. One key to it is to not use a very long strand. So that's number one. And I am the queen of I like long strands. So use a short strand. And then I always do use my very long needle. Make sure, like I switched because my eye from my other needle I was using was half that distance. You want a slightly larger eye because it does fray. You want a fresh cut end. Once it starts to fray, you just need to snip down a little bit so that you have a fresh cut. I don't lick it or wet it or anything. To me, that doesn't help. What I do is I take my thumb and my finger and I try and flatten it basically. It's very short. It's not sticking up very much, just a tiniest bit between my finger and my thumb. And then I take my needle and then I just kind of press it basically over where, that little bump off my finger and my thumb is. I just try and hit that mark and then pull it through. If you force it, if you don't have all of it, it'll start to unravel. So, so a bigger head, if you're having troubles, then even go a bigger head than that. A bigger opening in the head, I should say. Okay, so I've done that. I've done all those. So now I'm here. So I'm going to, okay. So to start it, I am just going to find a loop-de-doo, a couple of loop-de-doos to go underneath, and then I'm going to go around that last one and make a loop. All right, so the way you couch, if you don't have a long distance, this is the farthest I would do with one strand, is you're going to go the full distance, the 3 or 4, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then before I pull it tight, I'm going to come up. I'm going to go underneath that loop if I think depending on what side I want it on. And then I'm just going to go over. See what I'm doing? I'm just going over. I am doing this through a camera. And I'm just locking it down with a tiny little micro loop. And that's how you couch. So let me do it again. So I'm going to come up and see on this one, it curves. It's not straight. It goes in diagonally across the square and then come down. That's okay. I'm just going to go the length. This is the longest I do it this way. So then to get it to make that bend, I'm just going to come up. Make sure I'm underneath the loop. And then it'll bend it over. And I just like the look of that better than a true backstitch. Because it doesn't look like a 1980s circa arcade computer-ish looking. So then I'm going to, like I said, find 3 just little loop-de-doos. 2, 3. And that's how I do if the distance isn't very long. So now let me show you what I do if the distance is longer. Okay, if the distance is longer, I'm going to use 2 strands. And again, this metallic stuff is not fun, so I'm going to make sure that it's snipped very blunt. And then I'm going to squeeze it tight between my fingers, just where there's a teeny tiny bit sticking out. And then I'm just going to try and get this to go over most of it. And I got lucky with one. And what you can do is you don't have to do them both at the same time. You can take this, bend it down so that it's not in the way, hopefully. And then try it again. Squeeze this. Try and get most of it to go through. And then pull it through. That's why maybe having a fatter hole is a good idea. Now I grabbed 2 threads that are not the same length. So I'm going to come down here. All right, now that's okay. So I don't have that long of a string. That's kind of critical. Okay, so let's do this piece of snow. So I want to start here and go all the way to there. So that's way longer than I would do with one strand. So I'm going to lock off. And this is the way I couch whether I'm using metallic or not. The metallic is just extra fun. Okay, so I have 2 strands on my needle. I'm going to come to the front with both strands. Then I'm going to take 1 strand off. Make sure that they're divided all the way down to the bottom. So this one is on my needle. This one is not. So this one's going to stay on top. This one I'm going to couch with. So I am going to lay the loosey-goosey strand the direction I'm going, just in general. I'm not going to have it be off this way. I'm going to lay it just the general direction I'm going. Then, and this is the same whether you're, doing in a hoop or not. I kind of have my thumb on it just to help it kind of stay where I want it to. Then this one that has the needle, I'm going to take back down underneath. So strand on top, no needle, strand underneath, needle. My rule of thumb, so first off, I have a fractional stitch that goes diagonally up. So I'm going to go up, and I'm just literally looping around that loose thread and then pulling down. Not hard. I'm not pulling hard. If I pull hard, then I will pull the whole thing out. You can take this loose strand and pull it up and kind of play around with the tension. Now I have 1, 2 across, which is good. I like to go about 2-ish of a jump. Same thing. I'm just going to wrap around, make a loop around the thread on top, and then pull underneath. And again, I can lift up with this one until I think I have it laying nicely. Then it's going to diagonally go up. So I'm going to go up to that hole, go around, and come down, not pulling hard. I can also pull straight with this to even out my thread. I can just play with how nicely it's laying. I'm going to go 2, go around this, go down the same hole, and then I'm going to pull this and play with just how nicely it's laying. And then I'm going to come up 2 more, go down over that thread. That's what couching is you are putting loops across a piece of thread, usually a different piece of thread, so that it's like basically sewn down. Okay, then I'm going to diagonally come down 1 square, and then across. Now I have 1 more to go. It would not be necessary for me to loop this because I only have 1 more to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this together with my thumb. So if I pull on the thread, I have it pinched underneath. I'm going to pull the needle out, and I'm just going to now rethread the top fabric. I'm going to snip off so it's a very sharp end, pinch it between my fingers, help it go through the needle, And then since I only have one more to go, so since this is the last stitch, we're going to just go down with the top stitch. And then on the back side, they should be relatively close together. I mean, you have to be careful, you want to give a little tug, but don't, just be aware of how much you're tugging. And then probably they're not going to match up now. So we're going to cut them and see if we get lucky this time, threading them both at the same time. So the key is to pinch hard. Oh, look at that, I did it. Pinch hard together. And then, again, you're just going to finish them off. So I hit the camera. Finish them off the same way. So that is how I do couching stitch. This time I did it with metallic thread, but I do it with just regular thread. Anytime you see anything that looks like a back stitch in my patterns, or if I'm just doing something original work and want to outline something, I am using this method. Here I used the white. The difference of the white with the background wasn't quite enough for me, and so I just came in with the wing color, and that is all couching stitch. So that's how a more contrast of a couching stitch looks. So you can see my little micro tiny little loops, but that is a more, to me, desirable way to do outlining. If I need to, and I try and minimize outlining, but sometimes it's just necessary, then with backstitch. So there you go. Okay, I think that's it. I'm hoping that this will go faster than slower to get all these pieces and parts connected for this studio vlog. And yeah, the world in Southwest Colorado is definitely kind of settling down for a long winter's nap. And I hope that you this weekend have some time to just enjoy your stitching and just take a breath and have a break. And hope you have a wonderful next week, and we will talk to you later.